in different countries, in different time zones, in different conditions. I hope you're taking care of your health, your wellness, you're taking care of your family, your friends, your neighbor, your community, your society, your country. Please look after everybody the best possible way, whatsoever you can do from your side, ladies and gentlemen. The entire world is one family. We all are one, irrespective where we are. And we wish and we pray to Almighty, everybody got to be fine and everybody got to live long, healthy, with proper wellness. So, on behalf of International Chamber for Service Industry, we extend a very warm welcome to all of you. So, people in a different time zone, green morning, green afternoon, green evening, and green good night also. The people, those who have gone to sleep or those who are about to sleep. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Zaki Zainudin ji, who is an expert from Malaysia. And I heard so much from the segment where the water resources management strategy is being headed by Mr. Anil Manocha with our chamber. And he from Singapore had been telling me, Dr. Gulshan Sharma, it's a treat to the world to listen to Dr. Zaki Zainudin, to understand his strategy, his innovation, his creativity, his concern, and whatsoever has to be done for water quality and water quality modeling, and specialist from Malaysia. So this evening we extend a very hearty welcome to Dr. Zaki Zainudin ji,
Thank you.
and of course our senior advisor and our chief advisor for water management strategies, Mr. Anil Manocha from Singapore. Let me roll all the slides further now, ladies and gentlemen. On the right side, you have seen enough of pollution. We got to remove that pollution. So let me move ahead now, making education relevant. On 12th of August, I still recollect, 3 days before India's independence, there was a special program. There was a World Teachers' Day. And on that day, Honorable Minister for Water Resources, Government of India, Shri Ratan Lal Kataria ji, along with Arushi Nishank Pant, they had come. She's a great environmentalist and she's doing great job. And she's the founder of Sparsh Ganga. So the Honorable Minister for Water Resources of India, Union Minister State, he was with us in the function on 12th of August. And when we took a baby step and we started a wonderful journey, and he told us that you are doing making education relevant, how education can be complete without giving the basic inputs and awareness to our children, to our teacher, to our counselor, to our entire education ecosystem, that unless we don't save water and we understand water management strategies, how the world can be at peace. And from that day, ladies and gentlemen, we started. And then, of course, with Anil Manocha ji, right from Singapore, our senior advisor, we started a humble journey right from 23rd of October. We moved ahead, and every Friday evening, we started working on to International Chamber for Service Industry, our chamber, since 1994. The confluence of now about 30 million plus non-resident Indians world over. Those are in different countries. We believe Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Nobody can live in isolation. Nobody can grow in isolation. Nobody can breathe in isolation. The whole world is one family. We all are brothers, sisters of same God, same Almighty, and whosoever has sent us on this planet. Now, ladies and gentlemen, heartiest congratulations to India's Prime Minister and India's Education Minister, because the new education policy 2020 being announced on 29th of July 2020. And this is going to be the game changer now. And that, of course, we are discussing every day. 152 countries, we gather the data, and finally, we are getting into the very alarming situation that next misunderstanding world over is going to be on water sharing, on water strategies, water scarcity. Some of the cities are going to run out of water. Water levels are running down. So something has to be done immediately. And I think the journey starts from home because our children, our daughters, our mothers, our grandchildren, our wife, our sisters, they all, as a women empowerment, they can give new innovations and new pedagogies and andragogies, and the conventional ways have to go, and innovative and creativity has to come in a very big way, and that is possible for water saving only when we have women empowerment, because they can manage the whole family very well. Our chamber, from morning 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the evening, every day we have got complimentary 12-hour live telecast to the different countries. We start early in the morning from Australia, Fiji, New Zealand. Thereafter, we go all the way to Mongolia, and then we come to South Korea, Taiwan. Then we go to Middle East, then we go to Central Asia, and from there, then we go to Europe, and then we come back to India and South Asia and ASEAN. And after this program, we will be going to Latin America, Canada, and United States in the evening, of course, with Europe. This is the most important slide which we share with all of you. Our chamber, all 7 days a week, Monday to Sunday, we are having at 5 p.m. a very special program, 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days teacher and youth empowerment. Friday, water management strategies. Saturday, that is Swami Vivekananda Education and Youth Empowerment. Sunday, micro, small, and the medium enterprise strategies, what all has to be done, startup, self-employment, entrepreneurship. And then after this program, because tomorrow is a Deepavali, that's why today evening, because every Saturday evening we have got Ayurveda program, but today we are having a program immediately after this program on Ayurveda that goes for global wellness, where we talk about yoga, meditation, naturopathy, nutrition, organic. And then Sunday morning, we take you to Woodbury University, Burbank, California. And Sunday evening at 3 p.m., we go to ASEAN, all the 10 countries, Northeast India and ASEAN together. And then Sunday evening at 7:30 p.m., it used to be earlier, now it is 8 p.m., we go to non-resident Indians world over, and there are deliberations on the new education policy. On the request of 400 million youth together from the different states, different places, there's a special program in Hindi every day at 12:30 Indian Standard Time. What does today's youth want? Today we had this afternoon a program, avoid stress, no stress to be carried by anybody. And immediately after this water management strategies program, you will have Dr. Parmeshwar Arora, who is going to talk about Ayurveda for the global wellness. And today he is going to talk about facts about milk and dairy products part 2. And ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow on Happy Deepavali, right from Chicago, we will be having a live program for you at 5 p.m. tomorrow evening. Like today, you have got water management strategies, and tomorrow we will be basically empowering youth. These are the findings from our chamber, that is basic food, basic health, and basic education are to be given priority by everybody. Now, this is a humble appeal we would like to make from our chamber to the whole world and to all our brothers and sisters in India as well. This Deepavali, because this entire year the world has seen the crisis, like doctors, nurses, and paramedical people, they are great warriors. I consider our teachers, our educators, our school, colleges, universities, polytechnics, ITIs, all of them, they are also great warriors. At the same time, during this pandemic, what we have realized that there's a digital divide. Some of the people, those are staying in cities, are much privileged. But at the same time, the children are facing lots of difficulty. So this Deepavali, we would make a humble request from our chambers like we are doing. Like we clean our houses, we clean our mind, and we try and remove all the cobwebs, and we have a clean plate and slate, and you start in a beautiful way. Similar way, this Deepavali, we would make a humble request that instead of burning crackers and spending money on crackers, kindly give one mobile phone, basic mobile phone, which costs only 1,000 rupees to one child so that at least he or she is not deprived of education which is being imparted from mobile phone. So I would make a humble request and humble appeal from our chamber. No burning of crackers, no pollution. Let's help every child. If you empower the humanity with education, I think the whole world will be at peace. The lack of education brings garbage, pollution, disturbs peace, more arms, armaments, fights, misunderstandings, and all that world over. So education got to be given the leverage. Whatsoever human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. That's what we feel. We extend a very hearty welcome to Dr. Zaki Zainudin ji, the water quality and water quality modeling specialist. He is joining us live from Malaysia. We extend him a very warm welcome. He is a renowned water quality and modeling specialist. He is a professional engineer with the Board of Engineers Malaysia, Chartered Engineer with the Engineering Council UK, and Chartered Environmentalist with the Society for the Environment UK. He is often a source of reference for various organizations on surface water quality management. He is expert panelist for the Department of Environment Malaysia and is advisor to many prominent environmental and engineering firms. He has conducted various workshops and talks on water quality and modeling. Dr. Zaki is also on the management committee of the International Water Association, Watershed and River Basin Management Specialist Group. Ladies and gentlemen, along with him, we have got our senior advisor, Mr. Anil Manocha, who is the executive director with Ion Exchange Asia Pacific Private Limited. Now, Mr. Anil ji is based out of Singapore. He is an experienced professional in water and waste management. He is the executive director with the Ion Exchange Asia Pacific Private Limited. He comes with the rich professional experience of 35 years working with various stakeholders in Asia, Middle East, Africa, and other parts of the world. He actively works with communities, industry, technology, partners, governments, financial institutions in offering practical solutions for water treatment, water conservation, water waste treatment, zero liquid discharge, and infrastructure. Anilji is associated with various chambers, including Singapore Water Association, India Business Forum, trade organizations, and others. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, join me in extending a very warm welcome to Dr. Zaki and Mr. Anil Manocha ji. A pleasure to have both of them. And I hand over to Mr. Anil Manocha ji to take over the charge and to take on the proceedings further. You're looking very handsome, more Indianized, and your company is Ion, but you're looking more Indian today in that attire because tomorrow is Deepavali, so you want to give that impression. I hope you have sent across some sweets to Dr. Zaki. So let's start, Anil Manocha ji, and we take on today's proceedings.
Good day, everybody. Today we are on the fourth session on the series which we have started on water issues. In the last three sessions, we have touched the subjects of life sciences, ecology of water, water purification by natural means. We talked about the aspects of disaster management. We talked about the aspects of agriculture, savings, how we can save water in agriculture. Also, we touched upon the practical experience of Cape Town when Cape Town in 2018 was declared as a 0 day, and what changes took place in Cape Town and how they transformed from a 0-day water to a situation where the water level rose to 80% on the dams. And the basic learning which came from that session was that the water, if we address the issue very properly through policymakers and we communicate efficiently and effectively with the people are willing to understand and they are willing to change their habits, change their way the water is used. So the classic example which came from the Cape Town study was that when the water crisis was uh, broadcasted to the city, the per capita consumption was 300 liters per person per day. And within a span of 6 months, by various publicity, by various hoardings, by various things, the per capita consumption dropped down to 50 liters and the dam level increased to 80%. And this brought a important aspect of education in water sector. This brought an important aspect of broadcasting your issues when you face, and this brought an aspect of seeking a working across the board. So as we know, water is touches everybody's life. Water is very important for everyone. So if we involve everyone right from top to bottom and bottom to top, we should be able to address the issues on water. Issue is not on water, issue is on water management. And the moment you go further, you will realize that the surface water and groundwater, which we broadcast very predominantly in all the countries, whether it is Malaysia, which we are reading in the newspapers, or India, which we are seeing. The problem is that this water, which is hardly 2%, out of which only a portion of that is used by industries and homes, predominantly goes for industry, goes for agriculture. If we address the agricultural issues and bring water economy there, we can solve the problem of homes and industries. So probably I will reserve my comments after Dr. Zaki has given his deliberations. So maybe let us hear from Dr. Zaki, and we all are eager to hear from him. And then after that, we take it if there are any other points. Over to you, Dr. Zaki.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Anil. Thank you very much, Mr. Gulshan. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me here today just to share a bit of my thoughts. Happy Diwali to both of you tomorrow. Hope you have a wonderful celebration. Um, all right, so I guess without further ado, I'm just going to proceed ahead with my presentation. I'll try to share my screen here. Let's see, let's hope this works. Huh? Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, it has come.
Okay, great. All right, now, okay, before we begin, since we are conveying this to an international audience, there are some terms that I use in my slides. SG. SG, I use the acronym SG. SG in the Malay language in Malaysia is short for sungai. Or I say sungai. Sungai, essentially that means river. Sungai is actually translates to, in the Malay language, translates to river. So say, for example, you see the acronym SG Selangor, that translates to Sungai Selangor, or rather translates to Selangor River. So I hope that's clear. Okay, so if you see those terms in my slides, so now you're acquainted with those terms. All right, now, first and foremost, I'd like to show you this table. The way water quality benchmarking is done in Malaysia is essentially using this set of standards. These are our national water quality standards pertaining to surface water quality. I say again, surface water quality. Now, the way the classification is done is basically is based on the specific uses of the water, and those specific uses are denoted different categories. Essentially, class 1 water, class 1 river water quality, that is supposed to be the most pristine water quality conditions. And these standards are made up of physical, chemical parameters, and each class and each category is denoted a specific limit. So a class 1 water is supposed to be the best water quality. As you ascend, increasing the classes, you move on to class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5, the water quality status becomes more and more polluted, So a class 1 water in Malaysia translates to what we refer to, what's defined as conservation of the natural environment. Essentially, pristine water quality condition. So if all the parameters, the physical chemical parameters fall within the class 1 category, and essentially that is defined as being conservation of natural environment, very pristine water. If you were to use that water for water supply, practically no treatment is necessary except for some disinfection. And then fishery 1, class 1 water, fishery 1 translates to very sensitive aquatic species. I'll show you some examples later on. And then as you ascend class 2, if you take class 2 water, if you abstract class 2 water from the river, and you wanted to use that for water supply, then you have to do some kind of conventional treatment. Whereas class 2 water, that hosts more sensitive aquatic species, and you can also, that's the limit for recreational use with body contact. That means if you wanted to swim in the river, class 2 water, that's the lowest water quality that you're advised to go swimming. And then you move on to class 3. If you have class 3 river water, if you would abstract class 3 river water, essentially what happens is you need to, that river water has to undergo extensive treatment before it can be used for supply. And fishery 3 for fish species of less, more tolerant species, common species, that's fishery 3. And that can also be used for livestock drinking, class 3 water. Class 4 is irrigation, and class 5, none of the above. So this is how the water quality classification and benchmarking is done in Malaysia. But how do these numbers translate to actual conditions? I'll show you in a short while. So I'll just show you, this is an example of this river. This is Sungai Kuantan, again Sungai Kuantan River, upstream of Kuantan River. As you can see, the water quality is pristine. When you go upstream, the water quality is pristine. So this is what we define as being a class 1 river. It meets all the limits within the national water quality standards that I showed you earlier. And as you can see, the water is clear. It's beautiful here. And another example, Sungai Tawau River. This is in East Malaysia, in Sabah. Let me just play this video for you. If you can see the video, I dip in my camera. So you can see the clarity of the water. I'll show you. When I dip in my camera, you can even see fish swimming in the river. I didn't expect those fish in the river. When I dip my camera, got pictures of the fish. I was very surprised. So this is actually a class 1 water. So you can see the pebbles even at the river bottom. No? So this is how a class 1 water quality. Now, class 1 water quality, as I mentioned just now, they host very sensitive aquatic species. For example, like in this case, we have this very sensitive aquatic species, the Malayan masir. Have you heard of this before, Mr. Anil? The Malayan masir, the Kelah. You're familiar with this?
Yes, sir, I am.
You're familiar with this, huh? Tom Brady's. I believe they also have an Indian masir, right?
Yes,
in Sri Lanka, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a very sensitive fish species. This kind of species can only propagate in very pristine environments. Even at the slightest hint of pollution, this kind of fish species cannot survive. Just to put into context for you, just to put into context for everybody, if you were to go and to a restaurant in the middle of Kuala Lumpur in the city, and you wanted to purchase this fish for, say, for dinner or something like that, for them to cook, this goes for like $20 per 100 grams. Per 100 grams, $20 per 100 grams. And the fish is like, it's like 1 kilo. So you can imagine easily it's $200, $300. So because it's very tasty, they say that the meat is very sweet. The meat is very sweet, and even the scales. They say that when you grill the fish, the scales you can eat as if it were like chips. You can eat this. It's like chips. So this is an example of a very sensitive fish that can only survive in the most pristine of environments, in a class 1 river. So
We
this is
call
actually
it
a good
a
budget.
we call it a cold water fish. Cold water fish.
Cold water fish in India. It's a
Yeah.
masir as well, is it? It's a masir.
Mashir. Yes. Yes.
Mashir.
Cold water. Yes.
Cold
Mashir.
water fish. It's sensitive in India, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
Isn't it? It's a delicacy.
Yeah, it is more towards Srinagar side where there is a cold water, very cold water. Yeah,
Right. Exactly. Is it difficult to get over there?
it's difficult to get.
Very
Yes.
difficult to get, isn't it? Because it's very sensitive. Very sensitive
Yes.
to pollution. Okay. All right. This is another example. So chilling. Oh, this is upstream. You can see these are all masir. Dr. Gulshan and Mr. Anil. This is Chilling River, upstream, a class 1 river. These are all masir. Look at that. So many, they're in abundance. So this one, you can still find this kind of environment in certain parts of the country. This was a program that I did with WWF Malaysia. So you can see these are all masir swimming. This is actually a sanctuary specifically for for this kind of environment, for this kind of fish species. Okay, I'll just show you. This is the video. All of the masir swimming. Beautiful, very beautiful,
Wonderful.
very nice kind of environment. Class 1 water. Okay. So next time when you're here, you can visit this place.
They are available in plenty.
Yeah. Here only this side. I mean, this is one of the few places that they are available in those summers.
Okay.
Besides that, in Malaysia we also have this. This is the giant river prawn. This is also requires very good water quality. Again, this is not a lobster. This is a prawn, a freshwater prawn, and it is indigenous to Southeast Asia. And this is the largest species. I'm not sure whether you have this in India or not. This is a giant river prawn. The largest prawn species in the world. Macrobrachium rosenbergi. That is the name of the species. So this also requires very good water quality. In order to survive and in order to propagate. So I'm showing you, this is basically where you can where you can get class 1 water quality. You can get this kind of fish species. So in Malaysia, we have to protect our water bodies. So this is the nice part. Now I'm going to some issues that we are having here. So to explain to you. Now in Malaysia, we have this law, the Environmental Quality Act, 1974, that is regulates affluent discharges to surface water bodies in Malaysia. That regulates affluent discharges. So meaning, if you were to have pollution that were to be dislodged into the river systems in Malaysia, you must meet limits as per these regulations. So I'll give an example. These are the limits for industrial affluent discharges. So we have our a host of parameters, a whole of constituents that is regulated under the law. So we have standard A and standard B limits as per the law. So essentially, standard A applies when the discharge is located upstream of a water intake. That means if you have a discharge, a pollution source that is located upstream of a water intake, you're supposed to comply to the standard A limits. But if your discharge is downstream of a water intake, you're supposed to comply to the standard B limits. In essence, the standard A limits are more stringent, quote unquote, than the standard B limits. I'll take, for example, say in terms of BOD. Maybe Mr. Anil will know this. BOD is in water, so he's very familiar. BOD. So the limit for standard A, BOD is 20 milligrams per liter, whereas standard B is 50. I mean, standard A is more stringent than the standard B limits. So that's the intention. Okay, so these laws are supposed to protect surface water courses. So as long as the premises can comply to limits as per the law, by right they are allowed to release to the surface waters. But then again, what's been happening is, let me just show you, we've been facing some issues on river management in Malaysia. I will just show you this. There was this incident that happened in Pasir Gudang last year. Okay. So there was this incident that happened last year.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Imagine what it looks like now.
Okay. So this is what happened last year. So essentially, there was an illegal dumping incident in Pasir Gudang, and many people were affected because of the illegal dumping incidents. So when the authorities went in, and when this got the attention of the media, they were surprised to see the state of the rivers in Pasir Gudang. So essentially, what happened was, because of this incident, a task force was set up, comprising of myself, to actually investigate what was going on, actually what was happening in Pasir Gudang. So actually, what many people didn't realize at the time, even prior to the Kim Kim incident, prior to the Kim Kim River pollution incident, the rivers in Pasir Gudang were already polluted. I'll say that again. The rivers there were already polluted. Let me just show you. This is Perembi River. This is Perembi River in Pasir Gudang. You can see the color of the river is grey. And this is one of my sampling boys. His foot stepped on the sediment. This black plume arrives. This black plume, this black is essentially sediment that he disturbed. The moment he disturbed the sediment, the plume arrives. This is essentially anaerobic sediment. This is Buloh River, Sungai Buloh. The upstream segment of Sungai Buloh is clean, but as you go downstream, the water becomes black. The water becomes black. And if you do the numbers, if you crunch the numbers, Buloh River is actually the second most polluted river in the country. Second most polluted river. And this is also in Pasir Gudang. And then you move on. The most polluted river in the country, it turns out, is also in Pasir Gudang. is also in Pasir Gudang. Tukang Batu River. And the smell from this river is also very, very foul. Okay, so you can see from the appearance of the river is also black in color. Lato River, also the same. And this is, of course, Kim Kim itself, where the incident took place. Okay, this is an upstream tributary of Kim River. Selangkah River, you can see the color of the river. Even this is not pristine, this is gray in color. And this is Kim itself. You can see the appearance of Kim during low tide. When the tide is low, the river is black. But when the tide comes in, the tide covers the blackness. But when the tide recedes, it becomes black again. This is essentially organic, very high organic waste. All right. So now, the question is why? Why is it happening? Why is it? Because I already mentioned just now, we have those regulations in the law that control effluent discharges going into the water column. Okay, now I just want to show you something. I showed you just now the standard A and standard B. People thought that if you comply to limit as per the law, it's okay. But let me just show you exactly what the numbers mean. This is standard B effluent is being released into the river. Look at the color of the effluent. Color effluent is brownish. It's not exactly clean, even if it complies to limit as per the law. You see? This is going into Sembilang River. Upstream, you can see, look at the color of the river. It's clear. So this is why I say compliance. So just because you meet the levels in the law doesn't necessarily mean that the water quality will be preserved. Okay, so I'm just now that is the actual appearance of the effluent being released into the river. Now let's compare numbers. Let's look at the numbers. Okay, so again, this is the standard A and standard B effluent limits. And the table below is the national water quality standards. So we're not supposed to compare. I mentioned to you earlier, one is for effluent discharges and the other is for river water quality. We're not supposed to compare, but just for a while, just entertain me a bit. Okay, let's just zoom into one parameter. Let's look at BOD, physical-chemical parameter for BOD. Let's take the most stringent level as per the regulation. Let's take the most stringent levels as per the regulations. The most stringent level is standard A, 20 milligrams per liter. This 20 milligrams per liter, just for the sake of argument, let's compare it against the national water quality standards. Where does it fall under? This is 20 BOD. Class 1 is 1, 3, 6, 12, 5. Even the most stringent effluent standards is actually falls under class 5, the most polluted status in terms of ambient water quality. Okay, let's take another parameter. Let's look at ammonia for river. Standard A, ammonia for river is 10 milligrams per liter, 10 ppm. So let's compare that against the national standards for river. That falls under class 5 again. That falls under class 5 again. So meaning, just because you meet the limits as per the regulations doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have any impact towards the river, because the compliance levels are still much higher than even the class 5 levels in compared to the river standards. So why is this? Why is this the case? The reason for this is because affluent standards are drafted in such a way that they hope being the operative word, for the river to dilute some of that effluent. The question is whether that dilution really takes place or not. Whether that dilution really takes place or not. And this kind of regulation, these kind of standards is not just only inherent to Malaysia, just to let you know, it's also inherent to many developing countries. If you go to Thailand, it's the same. Even India, the same, because I've done some work with some colleagues from NIO, the National Institute of Oceanography in India, Mumbai. Same approach, same kind of limits, same kind of approach to setting the limits. So just because you comply to limits as per the law doesn't necessarily mean you don't have an impact towards the river. That's a separate matter. That's a separate issue. Okay. So now, to illustrate further, this is a discharge from a sewage treatment plant, an oxidation pond. 5,000 PE capacity oxidation pond. Now, when you analyze for physicochemical parameters, what you're doing is you're taking a sample. You're taking a sample from here. You send it to the laboratory and you run it for analysis. So as you can see just now in the previous example that I show you, the lab will then give the results back to you in terms of mass per unit concentration, milligrams per liter, meaning whatever that you sample, they extrapolate it per liter. They give it the results in terms of per liter. So when you take a sample here, they give back to you in whatever per liter volume. So if this is a 5,000 PE sewage treatment plant, that's how they do it. And they do it and they repeat the same process even for larger treatment plants. Let's just say in this example, another example I give you, this is a much larger sewage treatment plant, 400,000 PE mechanized STP. They do exactly the same thing. They take a sample here and you send it to the lab and the lab gives you back the result in terms of per liter. Okay? Now, so the regulations are then drafted based on that kind of approach and those kind of results that's given. But then again, think about it. This kind of discharge versus this kind of discharge, common sense tells you in terms of volume, which is bigger. This is much larger, isn't it? So this would obviously give more impact compared to the previous. But then when you do your regulations, when you do your compliance, you're doing on a per liter basis. You're not looking at the volume. You're doing on a per liter basis. So this is an issue. This is a limitation. As I said, not only in Malaysia, but also in other parts of Southeast Asia, even in India for that matter, because you need to look at the volume. And this is one of the shortcomings of concentration-based regulations. You're not looking at how much volume you are releasing, not just the concentration. So this is the first issue. The second issue, I'll give another example. Okay, let's just say the discharge I showed you earlier, you discharge into a river. Okay. This is Ketel River, Sungai Ketel. Sungai Ketel River eventually is a tributary of another river called Galas River. So let's just say the discharge I showed you earlier doesn't matter which discharge. If it goes to Sungai Ketel or it goes to Sungai Galas River. This is Galas River, I showed you, much bigger river. Ketel River, Galas River, Ketel River, Galas River. Which river do you think will be more impacted by the discharge? It will definitely be Ketel River. Why? Because lesser dilution volume, lesser dilution capacity. Do the regulations say anything about the current river dilution capability? No. The regulations don't mention about the ability of the river to take it away. They just say that as long as you comply to the limits as per the law, then you're allowed to release into the water column, you see. So you're not taking into consideration the dilution capacity, the dilution capability of the river, or in scientific terms, what we often refer to as the carrying capacity, the carrying capacity or the waste assimilative capacity of the river. So this is something that needs to be looked at. So this is why in the case of not just Pasir Gudang, but also in many other rivers in Malaysia and all the other parts of Asia as well, that despite meeting compliance limits as per the law, pollution is still happening. The pollution, the deterioration of water quality is still happening. So instead, what you need to do is you need to take into consideration the dilution capacity and capability of the river, as well as the volume and amount of discharge that's being released into the river. Okay, so this is the first part of my lecture. So I hope that's clear. Now, to say it is easy. To say it easy. So why don't the authorities do this actually? Why don't the authorities regulate in terms of the volume and taking into consideration the dilution capacity of the river? Actually, in some developed nations, like the US, for example, they've already taken this into account. So that's why in the US, the approach that they're taking is what they refer to as the TMDL approach, the total maximum daily load approach, the load approach, meaning the loading refers to not only the concentration, but also the volume that's being released into the water column, as well as the dilution capacity of the river. So the US is already looking in this direction. In fact, they've been looking in this direction for quite some time already. Now, of course, one of the issues of going in this direction is the complexities involved in implementation of loading control. Because the volume, I'll take for example, the volume of discharge that comes out from different premises will vary. It's different, isn't it? So it's very difficult to enforce. So that's why many countries opt for this kind of blanket approach. When it comes to the regulations, it's a lot easier to enforce. It's an across-the-board kind of approach. Now, so how do you implement this? Now, the way I look at it is what I've been proposing in Malaysia. This is where we come to the concept of water quality targets. This is what I've been talking about. Okay. The idea is this. The idea is to essentially come up and designate specific water quality targets based on the river structures. Meaning, instead of looking at compliance to just affluent compliance, you are looking at what matters more, which is the final water quality of the river and the river structures, and you designate the targets of those river structures, and it is represented in the form of a map like this, a color code map, a river basin map. So essentially what you're doing is you designate, okay, perhaps the upstream region, you want it to be class 1 water quality. As you move downstream, it can be class 2. As you go further downstream, class 3. But you don't want to go up to class 4 and class 5. This is based on the Malaysian classification. You don't want to go to class 4, class 5. At the worst, class 3. Why? That's most pragmatic. Most pragmatic. So you develop this kind of map. Now, why would you want to do this? Now, I don't know about India, but in Malaysia, when it comes to river basin management, you have so many agencies involved. So many involved in river basin management in Malaysia. In fact, the regulations that I showed you earlier, when it comes to pollution control, when it comes to effluent discharges into river basin, that is governed by the Department of Environment, which is a federal agency. It's at the federal level. But the Constitution of Malaysia says that water resources is a state matter. It's not a federal matter. It's a state matter. So you can imagine there will be discrepancies between federal and state level government agencies. So in order to find cohesiveness, sometimes it can be very difficult. So that's why I propose for you to come up with these targets with the end goal of unification. For the end goal so that the federal and state agencies can work together towards achieving these water quality targets. So the idea is, once you come up with these targets for all the different river basins, the best, of course, is to gazette these targets. Now, the beauty of doing these targets, once you've developed the water quality targets, the class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4, class 1, class 2, and class 3, these targets can then be translated to KPIs, key performance indicators, like this. Let me show you. Yes, something that looks like this. Because as I mentioned just now, in the river basin, there are many parties involved in preserving the river water quality. I'll give an example in the case of Malaysia. As I mentioned just now, you have the Department of Environment, which is at the federal level. They are in charge of pollution control and effluent compliances. And then you have another Department of Irrigation and Drainage, Malaysia. They are in charge of water quantity and irrigation. And then you have some state level water authorities. So everybody have their own role to play. Now, if you can have these kind of targets, and these kind of targets can be translated to KPIs, those KPIs can then be translated to this kind of scorecard. And what you can do then is you can assign measurable goals for each of those agencies to aspire to achieve. I take, for example, say in this case, item number 3, DOE, Department of Environment Malaysia, their KPI is to reduce BOD, palm oil mill effluent load, by more than 90%. So how they achieve that? Their KPI is to organizational, to licensing. So what is their progress? So you can track their progress by having this kind of KPI, by this kind of scorecards. So then they can also promote reuse policy, water reclamation. That is also a strategy for pollution control. Recycling. So that is their KPI. DID, irrigation and drainage. They need to monitor the flow of the river, because as I mentioned just now, the dilution capacity of the river also determines the final output. So they look at the flow regime. So that's DID's role. River buffer, that is also under DID. River riparian areas, preservation of riparian areas. So everybody has a role to play when it comes to controlling the effluent loads, and that can be captured and translated into KPIs, which can then be monitored into this form of scorecards. So I think, I'm guessing that in India, you would face the same kind of issues, right? In a river basin, there are many parties involved. You have state authorities, even the community can be given KPIs. So you can monitor that by adopting this kind of scorecard approach. The question is this: who to implement? who to implement, who will actually be coordinating all this, to say, to implement, to show in this kind of form is easy, but who will be the one that will be coordinating all these efforts? Now, this depends on the structure of water resource management specific to that particular state or country. As I mentioned just now, because in Malaysia, water is a state matter. In Malaysia, the most logical party to implement this would be the state authority, state level authority. Because when the state issue a directive, they can be the coordinating agency. Even the federal entities will essentially follow their lead, will essentially follow their lead. So that is the strategy. Okay. Now, the last point before I finish my presentation, I have to say this on the targets itself. A lot of people, when they see these targets, when people come up with water quality targets, they get the notion that these targets are for water quality improvement, to improve the water quality of a designated river stretch. To me, yes, that is a goal. Yes, it's true. That is an objective. But to me, for me, that's more like it's almost like a bonus, almost like a secondary goal. Because to me, the main purpose of these targets, rehabilitation is one thing, but to me, what's more critical is preservation. Because I've been doing this for quite some time. I've seen how as time progresses, water quality of many river basins deteriorate over time. So it's meaningful to me is if you set preservation goals, it's more pertinent to me to ask the question, how do you make sure that a river stretch that is class 2 now still maintains class 2 5 years down the road and doesn't deteriorate to class 3 and class 4? So to me, that's the more pertinent question. Because trust you me, there will always be new sources of pollution coming into the river basin 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road. So how do you ensure that with these new sources of pollution that goes into the river, the water quality doesn't deteriorate? And for me, the answer to that question is by having these kind of targets. So these targets are not only for improvement, for rehabilitation, but more critically, if you ask me, for preservation. All right. Thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Mr. Anil and Dr. Gulshan.
Thank you very much. Anil Manocha ji.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Zaki, for bringing the aspects. The most important take, if I have to summarize, is that the fishes or the agriculture, if they have to survive, the water quality has to be good. And if we have to achieve that, we have to be more sensible in discharging the water. Now, when we compare and when we try to argue why this is not happening, this is a common problem in India also, that the discharge which is given to rivers is not meeting the norms. So, and if we try to take the learning from various countries, first an important thing comes is that we only bill for the water you take, but we don't bill for the water you discharge back. Unless and until we bring the aspect of water conservation in a legalized manner, that I will be charged based on the water you bring back to the river, this thing will not improve. Now, Pasir Gudang is a classic example. Pasir Gudang is like a industrial belt. If I compare with anyone, like I can compare it with, say, for example, in Punjab, a place like Ludhiana, which is a lot of industries, you know. And all these industries also discharges the water in a similar manner, the way we are having in Pasir Gudang. But Also, we must be very sensitive that industries don't consume more than 5 to 6% of the surface water, but they pollute 100% of the surface water.
Right.
So it means if I have to solve the problem, I must solve at the
Yeah.
source.
Yeah.
I must ensure that
There's a policy.
before you discharge the water, either you pay, that is one, or you will be monitored by using online water quality devices, which
Yeah.
is making it possible by use of digital technologies. See, nowadays you can very well trace the source of contamination. So if we try to do that, try to integrate the water technology with digital technology or artificial intelligence, we can solve this problem. Now, again, if say for example, I take the example of Pasir Gudang, I relate with any one of the industrial belts of India, similar type of problems, and we have ways of manipulating the water qualities and discharge standards, because the waste disposal happens at a fraction of a time. The analysis comes after 24 hours or
Yeah.
48 hours, and it can be challenged by anybody. So unless and until we get into an act where one government takes a decision that you pay for the water you discharge, and you will be rewarded for the water you conserve. That will be one. Then second aspect, when you say river water basin quality management is very good, you can have different standards, but at the same time, at a national policy level, why should I have a polluting industry at the upstream,
Yeah.
at the bottom? So
Correct.
we can
Correct.
have so many processes to
Yeah.
control, and unless and until you bring the concept of total recycling, total water management efficiency, things will not improve.
Yeah.
So uh, now, since most of my audiences are not from water industry, so if I have to give a message to them, what is the take from this? Take from this is that you should be sensitive, that I have to bring efficiency in the way I use the water. That is one.
Yeah.
I have to be sensitive enough to propagate if there is something wrong happening. The issues of smell and all we face every day, day
Yeah.
in and day out. So that is one. Number three, the issues of federal and state interventions. This water belongs to federal, this also belongs to state. This also at policy level should be changed. Say for example, if I have to look at India, see who should be the owner of total water. The owner of total water has to be one agency, which is the federal government. They should control, because the total river basin integration belongs to federal. So a lot of things have to come. So maybe Gulshan ji, for you the advice here will be that yes, we have to sensitize the audiences on the water quality. If you have to see that the aquaculture and marine life has to go hand in hand with human life, we have to be very sensitive to that. And how do we measure that is the various technologies. And of course, the concept of total loading on a river basin will be taken. And then the aspect of KPIs, water recycling, and all those can come into picture. So this was a bit of a technical subject, and maybe few of my audiences may not be able to absorb it in the first go. But as we bring more clarity through next series, people will start appreciating that yes, what Dr. Zaki said today makes a lot of sense to people. So we were here to sensitize the issue of water quality by showing those pictures to the people, that yes, I should not pollute the rivers. That is one. So that is industry perspective. Similar thing happening in the agriculture sector also. So with this, I will give it to Mr. Gulshan. Yes, Dr. Gulshan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaki, and thank you very much, Mr. Anil Manocha. It was quite an eye-opening, and mashis, cold water, freshwater fish, which you had shown over there. It's a rare species to be seen. And I totally agree, something has to be done. What Mr. Manocha made a mention, that like you pay only for the water consumption, the bill comes to your resident, there's this much water you consumed. But the water which you are polluting, and whatsoever you're putting like a drainage back to the rivers and basins, I think those factories got to pay for it, because whatever recycling and whatever is to be done over there, all that part, I think there's a lot of work which has to be done onto it. And my concern again and again would be one, how do we make this as an integral part of education ecosystem? So whether children in school or in colleges or in universities or in polytechnics or in ITIs, every person got to be concerned, and everybody, and whether at public places, cinema halls, entertainment, shopping malls, all places, people have to think only one thing: how not to pollute anything, how to save every drop of water, so that the humanity can survive. Because you used one technical term, and I was reminded of 30 years back, concept of carrying capacity. Because first time when I had gone for ecotourism way back in mid 80s to rainforests in Latin America, this was the concept being used by George Washington University in 1985. So that time I was trying to, so concept of carrying capacity, that is another thing which you brought out today. So with these words, deep regards, great thanks, salutations to Dr. Zaki Zainudin ji and Mr. Anil Manocha ji. Look forward meeting yet another powerful program next Friday at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Stay safe, stay fine, and let's save every drop of water, whatever we can from our